took my kid to his first rock concert, like stadium, arena rock concert. Is that 2019 now? I guess when Roger Waters came to town.
Oh, cool.
He had the big pig flying around the Bridgestones.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say, I bet that was a wild show.
That was awesome. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, speaking
Yeah.
of shows in the music scene, I actually, I kind of just wanted to get to know how you found out about the situation surrounding the Exit in the past couple of months, how you ended up finding out about it and started getting involved a little bit.
Sure. So what's cool about this job on council, and I find opportunities for the synergy between my day job and love and passion of music and the industry with government policy and stuff like that, and everything that comes with it, including things like zoning and development and all that. So Chris and Talisha Cobb, who own Exit In, not the building, but the business Exit In, they've become friends, and really, a lot of the local independent venues I've gotten to know the folks who work there and the folks who own the business or whatnot. JT Gray, who owns Station Inn, the business, again, because we'll talk about this in a second, but he owns the business, not the building, right? So he just passed away, a few weeks ago now. And that's another one I'm concerned about. I understand how important the local independent venues are to the whole, I call it a music ecosystem here in Nashville. To me, it's more than an industry, because this city is unlike any other in the world. And what's interesting about starting out in the mailroom at BMI, and for 20 years being involved in this industry, a month after I got to BMI, Napster came on the scene, right? And so that kind of began this 20-year digital revolution that we've been on. And so I've seen then how the lack of copyright update has impacted the local working songwriter here in Nashville. And then you get on top of that, the extraordinary boom of growth that Nashville has gone through, and the impacts then, this gets to more about my the council gig, the impacts of affordable housing, both for folks who live here, both for small business. How we're unfortunately getting to a point where we've become a victim of our own success, and we're starting to literally export poverty outside because people can't afford to live here anymore, and they're starting to go to surrounding counties. So that lack of stability for folks impacts everybody, but specifically for the music industry, for those who are trying to come here on a dream, and be able to afford to be here, to play here, to record here. All of that is important because, like I said, we are the global capital of music. And so if we don't support that ecosystem and every aspect of it, we cannot take for granted that we are that global capital of music. And we've got to do everything we can to support, as I say, the least among us. And that starts with supporting those that are our working creative class and those that support them, and those are our local independent venues. So I got involved specifically with Exit In when there was the potential of a historic and affordable apartment complex across the street from Exit In was going to be redeveloped, and unfortunately it probably is, into a Holiday Inn Express, right? Coming from the guy who represents the district with the greatest concentration of hotels of any other district combined, we don't need as I said on the microphone at Exit In, a soulless hotel just across the street. That doesn't necessarily, provide a lot of value for the creative and cultural preservation of the area. And it's not just preservation; it's advancement of that as well. From a historic perspective, and I say that we are a victim of our own success, across the board on historic properties, we're destroying some of our culture in order to build that condo, right? Remember that big battle we had on Music Row about Studio A, right? How how important that was, that place
I
was.
wanted to touch on that while talking to you as well, because that seemed to be in direct relation. The overall themes, and also the apartment complex being torn down. That's right next to the venue at the end too. And
Yeah, I have not played in Exit In, but I have played in the end back in the day.
Same.
And so what was concerning there is that that kind of development pressure would come across the street, would go in different areas. And sure as heck, here we are. In this boom market of the economy that we're going through, the money is just too great. And it's unfortunate that, as I say, we're becoming a victim of our own success. People are trading out the dollars for sacrificing the culture and the historic nature of who we are. And I say, the historic nature, but there is a culture of supporting working class that, as I mentioned before, we're starting to get away from, and that's going to hurt us big time in the end. Development has gone so far. It's difficult when historic preservation is mostly about architecture. And wow, we need to save that building because it's really important looking and it's historic and whatnot. But then when you go to cultural preservation, and this is really, like I said, I don't want to just harp on preservation. It is advancement of ensuring we're supporting those going forward. But specifically in our venues, a lot of times the buildings that they're in are not architecturally worth saving, right? But what goes on inside them, whether it's Exit In or Station In, both buildings that are just kind of older industrial, kind of commercial buildings. How do you preserve that? As an elected official, it's very frustrating because I don't have very many tools in the toolbox to be able to effectuate anything, really. Everybody has property rights and people can sell their buildings. But, one thing I can do is speak up that this is wrong, especially in this case with Exit In, where Chris, the owner of Exit In, was able to put together an equally competitive bid for this property to his landlords, and they denied it. And supposedly the reason is because he and others, me included, stood up against that hotel across the street because his landlord had interest in other properties and said, well, you're hurting my property values, so I'm not going to sell to you. So this gets kind of complicated now about where we are with Exit In. There is a development company out of Chicago that is moving here called AJ Capital. And they are mainly a hotel developer. They are building a headquarters in the WeHo, Wedgwood, Houston neighborhood. And one of their tenants is Live Nation. I'm not anti-Live Nation and I'm not anti-AEG or any of the big, more corporatized booking agents or, companies like that. Live management venue operators and things like that. But having the balance of the local independent venues with the large guys is really, really important. And so what is going on is Chris doesn't own the property he's on. He has a lease, but he doesn't own the property. And so it appears that AJ Capital is getting into the business of owning venues. The problem is that it's not just the fact that they're going to save the building, which they say they will, that there's a lot that goes on with managing venues, especially for the local artists that are at a certain level that are rising up. You go back in this 50-year history of Exit In, and you see about who started there, who was playing in 1971 and 2 and in the 70s and where they are now. That model is kind of tried and true. Obviously with the digital world, it's changed a little bit. But live performance is, of course, like we've experienced this past last year, has I think I certainly value live performance more because we haven't been able to go out and see shows, right, and whatnot. So what is possibly going to happen is that if AJ Capital buys this property, they're going to put up a swanky hotel next to Exit Inn. They're going to operate Exit Inn on a more corporatized level. It's not going to be the same. It's not going to be a place that supports the local independent artists, the up-and-comers or whatnot. It's going to contribute, as far as I'm concerned, a trifecta of hyper-gentrification, which is a problem that we're dealing with in Nashville from a broader perspective of, like I said, exporting poverty, and people can't afford to live here. It's going to gentrify us from a housing perspective. It's going to house us, our residents. It's going to gentrify small business. And as far as I'm concerned, it's going to gentrify part of Nashville's soul. And we've got to do everything we can in government and in the private sector to try to find ways to be a little more proactive on historic preservation, because these independent venues are so important to the future of our independent artists. And as you know, studying labels and whatnot, it's not the same as having a budget to throw 10 artists up against the wall, maybe 2 of them stick, and then we're going to throw a bunch of money at them. You've got to, at this point, to get to that level, perform in venues and get yourself to a certain place that labels, the major labels, will even take a look at you, right?
Well, even as an independent
to that
artist,
point. So if we don't have these independent venues, then what? So it's unfortunate that we don't have the tools in the toolbox, and we're so reactive on preservation and combating hyper-gentrification. That the market is so hot here, trying to create housing that is attainable for folks. Heck, I couldn't even afford to move into this house right now if I left. I mean, it's in this area in Donaldson, it's gotten to that point. So I am filing a resolution at council. I'm going to get some stakeholders together, metro departments plus outside agencies, and we're going to do a study on all our live venues, all of them, focused on our independent venues and how important they are and what we can do to create new tools to save them. Because my fear, and I know it's coming, is that Exit In is only the first one. There are other venues that I'm worried about as far as their long-term stability and sustainability. So it's something that must be done, because it's part of our soul, and it's a part of the whole ecosystem, like I said, of supporting the next generation of artists.
for sure. No, you just touched on a couple of things I would love to unpack and explore more as well. But a lot of people don't, unless they're an artist, a lot of people don't understand also that unsigned artists, the way that we get paid, period, is through live performance. Spotify streaming, that's not going to get you a thing. The way that the people I've worked with have ever come close to taking off work financially worth it was because the payment that night gave the band something to help people live. I completely understand what you're saying.
Yeah, it's so true.
I would love to explore more. I was gonna ask this later, but the difference, because a lot of people I don't think understand exactly what's happening with the Exit In being a lease rather than owning the property in and of itself.
Yes.
When AJ Partners, for example, said, I want to make sure I say this right, that they were going to put the Exit In on the National Historic Register.
Right.
You seem to have the opinion that that's not enough, and I'd love for you to explore exactly why that's not enough.
Sure. There's not a lot of power to this job as a council member, but there's 2 aspects to it. One is certainly fiduciary, right, of budget and taxes and things like that. The other one is planning and zoning. So if you want to do something with a piece of property and change zoning so you can go higher or redevelop or whatnot, you have to go through a council member. So that's something that I definitely have learned a lot about and have gained a lot of knowledge about. a National Historic Register is a nice honorary designation, if you will. It does give you some like 10% tax break if you were to invest in your property, but it has zero effect on your ability to demo your property. The only thing that will protect a property from demolition or alteration is a Metro Historic Overlay, which is a zoning tool that ensures that if this property owner, if it has a historic overlay on it, if they try to go pull a permit, nope, stop, nothing, you don't, and if you do something without a permit, that's a big no-no and a huge fine. In my district here in the Donaldson Opryland area, I've done a few different historic overlays to save historic properties. So it's a very good tool, and there's so much data that shows that those properties that have been saved all over time have a greater value overall because of the historic nature of them. So that was a misstep or misspoke. AJ Capital misspoke on that. They have now since said they would put a historic overlay on it, but I'm still concerned that. So, for example, there's two pieces to this property. There is the building where Exit In is, and then Chris has a bar next door called Hurry Back, which the name harkens to historic nature of the building. To go into Exit In, you actually have to go through Hurry Back. With a lot of the independent venues, you make only so much on tickets and all that for the show, but you make additional revenue from beverages and whatnot. So you have to go into Hurry Back, and then you go into Exit In. And what used to be the entrance in the front of Exit In is now the exit. So that's how kind of the business model works. So I am pretty sure that they are not going to keep the corner piece where Hurry Back is. That's where their swanky hotel is. That's going to be unaffordable and unattainable to those of us that are affording to be able to go to Exit In shows now and pay, $5-7 for a beer. It's now going to be $14-15. It's the whole vibe of the place is going to change. You don't spend $6.5 million on a property that they're doing like this in order to just save a piece for altruism and keep it the way it is. They're a hotel developer. They're doing massive amount of development in other parts of the county. And so they have not been totally transparent about what their plans are. And so there is an opportunity here coming up at council where I'm going to be pretty loud about calling them out about their transparency. Because this place is so special and important to Nashville, I think everybody who lives here deserves to know exactly what's going on.
Exactly. And speaking of the AJ Capital statement, when they released a statement, there's a long period of time where things were pretty silent. But part of that statement was the offer to refund those who donated to the Exit In GoFundMe. The reaction there was very interesting to watch throughout the scene, and I would love to hear your take on how you've seen the working creative class, the people who make up the Nashville scene. How have you seen that scene respond to this whole thing?
It was a very strange thing to me to say. We're going to refund your money. Tone deaf is what I would say. At the end of the day, what this is to me also, and this applies broader, but specifically about our music industry here, is that you have small business owner, local family to Nashville, caretaker of a 50-year iconic brand, supporting the creative class, being trampled on by mega corporations from Chicago coming down here and saying, we are going to refund your money. It's like tone deaf, man. These folks supported this family who are trying to keep their business and this iconic place that people love and cherish. It's not that they don't want, change is the only constant. I get that. But how important this place is, again, to the working creative class, that is what's going to change. It's not just saving the building, but I think that everybody who donated this almost $250,000 almost, I think it was, was doing so because how important this place is to everybody who has a dream, who wants to be able to play in a place like this, and have a shot to get to the next level. If you play, and you get to a place where you're playing at the Exit Inn, man, you feel like you're, and you truthfully are getting to a spot where, I'm getting traction in this very difficult business, right? We need to make sure we have places like that are maintained as locally independent venues. Like I said, it's difficult for me because the property is under contract. Legally, I can't stop it, but I can certainly be very loud, and I appreciate this opportunity to talk about it too.
Yeah, no, thank you for joining me. So I'd love to talk about the GoFundMe, the $250,000. It's increasing still every day, even since he's announced that they met the goal. I know for a fact it's over $230,000 now.
Right, yeah.
Was that response in character of the Nashville music scene that you've come to know?
It doesn't surprise me. I hear more and more, I've heard for a while now, especially being in this role, how sick and tired people are of losing the things that are the most valuable to us. And that's why I mean, where, the growth is great, right? Remember, we were called the IT City, right? All that is great. I like growth. Part of my job is to help manage growth in my district per se. But like I said, we become a victim of our own success when that growth tramples over the culture that has created us and continues to drive us forward. So, it's not just about preservation. It's about ensuring we have those entities and organizations and venues that support the next generation of musicians.
For sure. And you've already touched on this, but I'd love to elaborate it if you would like to. What steps, and this can be the final question, I understand you're a very busy person. What steps do you think we need to take in order to ensure that we can preserve who we are as a Nashville culture as well as grow? What do you think we can start with?
It's a perfect question. So like I mentioned earlier, I'm filing a resolution at council, which basically a resolution is a statement from council, and it's a request. And I've already talked to the stakeholders before I file it, so we're going to do this. We've got to do a study that can show substantially and hopefully quantifiably how important these local independent venues are. And through the study, we need to be able to show the precarious position that these venues are in when it comes to who the landlord is and what their lease is. If we can get that information, they're not legally, they don't have to give us that information, but that will help us to determine, we've got, say, 11, 12, 13 really important locally independent venues. If over the next 10 years we lose several of them, what happens to us, in our ability to support the up and coming working class musicians? So we've got to do that study first that we can then substantiate. Do we create some sort of grant program? Do we have some sort of, dare I say, tax abatement program, which I don't think we can do. But there's got to be other things that we can do. And part of this is looking at what other cities have done, whether it's other music cities of Austin or other places. Where are we lacking? How can we try to get ahead of this so that places like Exit Inn and Station Inn. Station Inn is down there in the middle of the Gulch. It's a small little building that's funky and cool. And what goes on there for like $3 popcorns and $5 beers and this most amazing bluegrass and country and every kind of music that they play there is so important. But how do you maintain that? That building is worth, that property is worth so much, and you want to make sure that that somehow we can give some incentives for people to think twice before they just move forward with demoing a building and putting up a condo or a soulless piece of the tourism industry that quite honestly, I think we're doing very well in that regard. We don't need to lose our soul in order just to drive more people here.